Ok, muy bien. Hola, hola, hola a todos. Aquí estamos en la lección 3.4. Hoy vamos a hablar de dos verbos irregulares. We're going to talk about two more irregular verbs that are definitely among the most common verbs in Spanish. Get these two, it will explode your potential for speaking Spanish and having a bigger vocabulary. So let's take a look at the verbos tener and venir. So tener and venir, again, among the most frequently used verbs in Spanish. Tener means to have, but it means to have as in to either have to do something or have a physical possession. I have a pen. It's not have like I have eaten, okay? So it's have in a physical sense. And then venir means to come, to go from one place to another. So because they're irregular, you have to learn these two different exceptions, and there really are very few irregular verbs, guys. I know we're giving those to you because you need to know them, obviously, but these are very common ones, and there aren't a whole lot of crazy irregular verbs out there. So the verb tener, to have, right? It's ER verb. You'll notice that it follows the ER endings in everything except for the first person. Venir, IR verb, follows the IR endings and everything except for the first person singular. So let's look through. We'll go through, repeat all the different conjugation forms of tener so you can hear them, and then we'll do venir, and then we'll talk about specifically. So clase, repitan, yo tengo. Tú tienes. Usted tiene. Él tiene. Ella tiene. Nosotros tenemos. Nosotras tenemos. Vosotros, vosotras tenéis, okay? And then ustedes tienen, ellos tienen, and ellas tienen. Now you'll notice the verb venir is very similar. Clase, repitan, yo vengo. Tú vienes. Usted viene. Él viene. Ella viene. Nosotros venimos. Vosotros, vosotras venís. Ustedes vienen. Ellos vienen. Ellas vienen. Okay, so they're similar. You can see the first person conjugation and first person singular rhymes in both of these, but super common verbs. Notice that the endings are the same as the regular endings. So it's irregular because of the yo form, which has a GO. And that's just based on archaic pronunciation. It sounded weird to someone to say teno. And so they stuck a G in there because that was the way it was pronounced in old vulgar Latin. And here we go, okay? So, tengo, tienes, tiene, tenemos, tenéis, tienen. Vengo, vienes, viene. Venimos, venís, vienen. Here we go, my little magic, okay? Again, first person singular, second person singular, third person singular, first person, second person, third person, plural forms for both verbs. Tengo, tienes, tiene. Tenemos, tenéis, tienen. Vengo, vienes, viene. Venimos, venís, vienen. That first person singular for both of those, the irregular form with the NGO. Okay, now you'll notice that this is what we call stem changing verbs. So the endings are consistent, but the stem part of the verb, which is a part of the root, we talked about that in the very first lesson. We take off the AR, ER, IR, you're left with the root. So that's the stem or the root. The E changes to IE. Okay, so that's where it's irregular in the first person singular conjugation, and then it's what we call a stem changing verb. And that happens in the tu, the third person singular, and the third person plural form of those verbs. So in fact, let's go back, take a look at that. So in the first person singular and plural for both of them, the root stays the same. It's TEN, and VEN, which is what you would expect. But in that second person and third person singular, third person plural, that E in the infinitive changes to IE. That's what we call a stem changing verb. So these two verbs are irregular in two different ways. Number one, because the yo form has a GO, and the second one is because the second person, third person singular, third person plural, that root or that stem changes from E to IE. Okay, so again, some examples. This is from the video on Panorama. ¿Tienes una familia grande, Marisa? No tengo una familia pequeña. So because it's a yo form, it goes to tengo. And the first one, the tú form, tienes, that E changes to IE. So again, it's stem changing. Notice that the nosotros and the vosotros forms are completely regular. Okay, so just like for other verbs, it's regular. That doesn't stem change, and there's no funky ending on the end. So regular, just like the other ER and IR verbs that we looked at so far. So again, pause here, number your paper 1 through 9 for tener, number your paper 1 through 9 for venir, and go through and write the form. Go back, look at the notes. This isn't a quiz, right? So use your notes, but you want to see yourself writing and have the experience of actually physically writing out or typing the correct form. So pause here, answer these questions, come back, we'll talk about it. Okay, hopefully you really did pause and do these answers. If not, I really strongly encourage you to take every example to practice that you possibly can. So let's go through this together. Número 1, repitan. Ellos tienen 2 hermanos. Número 2, yo tengo una hermana. Número 3, el artista tiene 3 primos. Número 4, nosotros tenemos 10 tíos. It's a big family, 10 uncles or uncles and aunts. Número 5, Eva y Diana tienen un sobrino. Número 6, usted tiene 5 nietos, grandchildren. Número 7, tú tienes 2 hermanastras, stepsisters. Número 8, ustedes tienen 4 hijos. Y número 9, ella tiene una hija. Ok, ahora para el verbo venir. Número 1, repitan, mis padres vienen de México. Número 2, tú vienes de España. And that's a good example there. We talked about linking. Tú vienes de España. The E ends with an E, España starts with an E, so you're going to kind of link those together and have it more sound like one longer sound. Tú vienes de España. Número 3, nosotras venimos de Cuba. Número 4, Pepe viene de Italia. Número 5, yo vengo de Francia. Número 6, repitan, ustedes vienen de Canadá. Número 7, Alfonso y yo venimos de Portugal. Número 8, ustedes vienen de Alemania. Y número 9, usted viene de Venezuela. Okay? So again, if you missed more than you're comfortable with, which hopefully didn't take a lot, then pause, go back, look at the conjugations, practice them, write them out. You want to be able to master these different forms of these 2 very common verbs. So let's talk about some different ways to use those verbs. One super cool thing about tener is we said tener means to have. It means to physically have, not to have done something, but to have something. It doesn't have to be, I shouldn't say physical, but it means to hold or to have something. So we talk about idiomatic expressions, or things that don't really translate back and forth from one language. You can't say the same thing. You can't just translate word for word. It's called a set expression, and it's talked about on page 93 of your manual. So you can go back and read it. It doesn't talk about it a whole lot, but just enough to give you an idea. What it means is in English, for example, we say, I am hungry. In Spanish, you can't say, I am hungry. You can't say, yo soy hambriento, yo soy hambre, yo estoy hambre. It doesn't work. We say, yo tengo hambre, I have hunger. So it's the exact same idea. You'll use yo tengo hambre every single time you would ever say I'm hungry, but you can't conjugate that phrase word for word. It doesn't work. It's an idiomatic expression. It's specific to that idiom, that language, idioma. So, in Spanish, we say yo tengo hambre. That's a great use of the verb tener, and there are other ones. So let's look at these. On one of the compositions we had on the first or second week, there was a question was, how old are you? In Spanish, we don't say I am 25. We don't say yo soy 25. That doesn't even mean anything. It's not even understandable. We say I have so many years. So yo tengo 18 años. Yo tengo 18 años. I'm 18 years old. And let me just tell you, I'm so glad I'm not 18 years old. So tener number años is how you would communicate your age, how old you are. You can't translate it word for word, but that's the exact same equivalent of I'm 30 years old. I'm 30. Tengo 30. And someone says, ¿cuántos años tienes? Yo tengo 30. Or yo tengo 30 años. It's the same thing. I'm 30, or I'm 30 years old. So tener and number años means to be years old. Tener calor. You can't say in Spanish, yo soy calor, or yo estoy calor. You can't say yo soy caliente, which is different under different subtones for sure. Or yo estoy caliente. You say I have heat. Yo tengo calor. Ay, hace mucho calor. Yo tengo mucho calor. Tener cuidado means to be careful. You tell somebody you should be careful. You should have caution, is what you're saying. Frío means cold. You don't say estoy frío. You say yo tengo frío. And notice that because now frío is a noun, you're not changing it for if you're masculine or feminine. So it's a noun. It's something that you're having. You're not using it as an adjective to describe something. So whether you're a male or female, whether you're singular or plural, yo tengo frío, nosotros tenemos frío, nosotras tenemos frío, it's a noun. Hambre, we said that, hunger. Miedo means fear of. So yo tengo miedo de serpientes. I'm afraid of snakes. Yes, verdad. Yo tengo miedo. I have fear of something. Prisa. Prisa means to hurry. If you know someone who has lived for a while in South America, we do this a lot. That means ándale, means get on it, means be in a hurry. So, yo tengo mucha prisa. Lo siento, no puedo hablar con usted ahora. Tengo mucha prisa. I'm in a big hurry. Sorry, I can't talk to you right now. I'm in a hurry. I gotta get out of here. So, yo tengo prisa, tú tienes prisa, usted, él, ella tiene prisa, nosotros tenemos prisa. Ustedes, ellos, ellas tienen prisa. To be right, we don't say you are correct. We say you have reason. You have a justification. Tú tienes razón. You're right. Yo tengo razón. The no tener razón means to be wrong. You don't have reason. You're not right in this. So mi hermana no tiene razón. She's not right. She's wrong. She is mistaken. Sed, to be thirsty. We don't say yo soy or yo estoy sed. We say yo tengo sed. So hunger, hambre, sed, thirst, calor, frío. These are great ways of the only way that you can communicate these expressions. Sueño means sleep. So yo tengo sueño means I'm sleepy. There is a way of saying I am tired with the verb cansado, but it means I'm physically tired. Like I just ran 10 miles and I'm tired. Sueño means sleepy. So it means tired in the fact that I am very sleepy. I need to go to bed. So tengo sueño. I'm sleepy. Tengo mucho sueño. I'm very sleepy. And then suerte. Suerte means luck. You've probably seen it written before. Buena suerte. I think I put on many of your exams or some of our communications. So tengo suerte means I'm lucky. Tengo mucha suerte. I'm very lucky. Ella tiene suerte. She is lucky. Okay? So these are, the good thing is you've already got half of it down because you know what tener means. You know how to conjugate it. So again, your vocabulary just expanded by a gazillion once you learn these different nouns that go with it or learn how to put it with these nouns. So remember, this is the only way of communicating. It's not just the best way, it's the only way of communicating these expressions using the verb tener. There's one more. To have to do something, and this is so super useful. Again, your ability to communicate is going to be doubled here. I have to eat. yo tengo que, and then the infinitive, comer. Remember, we talked about this earlier on. When you have two verbs in Spanish, typically you only conjugate the first verb, and this is an example. Yo tener que estudiar. ¿Qué tienes que estudiar hoy? What do you have to study today? Tengo que estudiar biología. So note that you've communicated that whole thing by only changing one word. You're only changing that verb from tienes to tengo. The que stays the same. Estudiar stays the same. Biología stays the same. You're just changing the verb to communicate that you have to do it. Okay, so pregunta, clase, ¿cómo se dice en español? Javier has to go home. Okay, so we know Javier, the form, that's an él, right? That's a he, so we're using the third person singular. Tiene que go, the verb for go is ir a casa, to his house. Javier tiene que ir a casa. All right. Next one, very similar. Tener ganas de means to feel like doing something, okay? Do you have desires to, is what it means. But it's a super easy way of asking somebody if they want to do something. So same thing. ¿Tienes ganas de comer? No. Tengo ganas de dormir. Or no, comma, no tengo ganas de comer. Remember, if you're answering the negative to the original sentence, we use a double negative in Spanish. If you're saying no, I feel like doing something else, then just one no, because now you're saying what you do have ganas de hacer. Okay? So, clase, ¿cómo se dice en español? We feel like studying. You would say we, nosotros, tenemos ganas de estudiar. Tenemos ganas de estudiar. So again, just two other ways of using the verb tener to communicate something that doesn't mean the same thing in English, but has that same indication. So we have tener que, to have to do something, and we have tener ganas de, to have desires or to feel like doing something. Remember what verbs go, what helping verbs go with each one. Tener que and tener ganas de. So you're just going to have to put those together and keep those two things straight. Okay? So, clase, por favor, pongan en su papel número del 1 hasta el 8 y contesten aquí estas preguntas con la forma correcta de tener or venir. Okay? So, you're looking for context. The sentence will tell you which verb you're going to use, and then you'll get your signals for how to conjugate that. Okay? So, pause, number your papers del 1 al 8 y pongan las respuestas correctas a estas preguntas. Luego, unpause y vamos a hablar de él. ¿Ok? Número 1, clase, repitan. Hoy nosotros tenemos una reunión familiar. Número 2, yo vengo en autobús de la Universidad de Quito. Número 3, todos mis parientes, remember that means relatives, todos mis parientes vienen, excepto mi tío Manolo y su esposa. Okay? Parientes is plural, and it's third person, it would be they, right? So third person plural, vienen. Número 4, ellos no tienen ganas de venir porque viven en Puerto Viejo. They don't want to come, they're not desired, they don't have desires to come because they live in Puerto Viejo. Número 5, mi prima Susana y su novio no vienen hasta las 8 porque ella tiene que trabajar. So note the subject change. We're talking about Susana, but the first one we're talking about Susana and her boyfriend. Second part we're going to talk about Susana. So it can't be tienen, right? Because the subject now is ella. Ella tiene que trabajar. Número 6. Clase repitan. En las fiestas, mi hermana siempre viene muy tarde. Okay, even though fiestas is plural, the subject is mi hermana. That's ella, that's third person singular. Clase repita número 7. Nosotros tenemos mucha suerte porque las reuniones son divertidas. Nosotros tenemos. Número 8. Mi madre cree que mis sobrinos son muy simpáticos. Creo que ella tiene razón. Okay, because now the subject is mi madre, and that's the third person singular form of tener. Okay, muy bien. Once again, if you didn't get them right, pause, go back and look at it. See if the question was if your errors came from not knowing which verb to choose, and again, that comes from the context of the sentence, or if you didn't get the subject correct, or if you just didn't conjugate the verbs correctly. Okay, now, pongan en sus papeles los numbers 1 through 6. You're going to choose the appropriate expression of tener for these sentences. And when you come back, I'll play the recording. We'll tell you what the answers are, okay? Okay, aquí vamos.
Describir. Describe what these people are doing or feeling. Use an expression with tener. Tiene mucha prisa. 2. Tiene mucho calor. 3. Tiene 21 años. Tienen mucha hambre. 5. Tienen mucho frío. 6. Tiene mucha sed.
Okay. So again, just a different way of getting your brain to recognize what's going on. Hopefully you've were able to figure out the subject pronouns, right? We have single, single, singular, single. We have on the bottom row 4 and 5, we have 2, so we use the ellos form, right? And then the different expressions: in a hurry, hot, age, hunger, cold, and thirst. So that's it. And again, once you've learned the conjugations of tener and venir, once you understand those different expressions with tener, as far as the calor, frío, etc., and once you get the tener que and tener ganas there, you're going to be open up to be able to describe so many more things. So I'm excited for you. As always, let me know what kind of questions you have and how I can help. Bye, guys.